Good evening. We'd like to welcome everyone to the regular meeting of the Thursday, October 22nd, 2020, regular meeting of the Planning Commission. This is a meeting by teleconference only. We'd like to start by asking the Commission Secretary to call roll.
Thank you, Chair Lezak. Commissioner Pickett.
Here.
Commissioner Strongman.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Ward.
Here.
Commissioner Reiser.
Here.
Vice Chair Kerselik.
Here.
And Chair Lezak.
Here.
All 7 members present. We may conduct business.
Thank you. So as stated earlier, this meeting is by teleconference only. This meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order, which suspends certain requirements of the Ralph M. Brown Act. Teleconference locations are not open to the public. To provide a live remote public comment, please join the Zoom teleconference meeting. The meeting ID is 918-4871-6463. And the login password is 125432. So for those of you who wish to make a public comment, please use the raise hand feature, which will alert the commission staff you have a public comment you'd like to provide. And please wait your turn once you're brought into the meeting. Say your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to make any remarks. So with that, we'll go ahead and move into the agenda for this evening's meeting. And the first item on the agenda is the consent calendar. And I'll ask the Commission Secretary, are there any consent calendar items?
No, Mr. Chair, no items.
Okay, confirming that there are no items on the agenda, we'll go ahead and move into the public communications portion of the agenda. Excuse me. This portion of the agenda is reserved for comment on items that are not on the regular agenda. Under the Brown Act, the Commission cannot act on items raised during public communications, but may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed, request clarification, or refer the item to staff. So I'll go ahead and ask the Commission Secretary, is there any members of the public who are wanting to make public comments this evening?
Mr. Chair, I don't see any members raising their hand on the attendee list, and I've confirmed we also do not have any written comments during this portion of our meeting.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Based on that, we'll go ahead and close the public communications section of the agenda, and we'll move into tonight's public hearings. So the first and only hearing on tonight's agenda is the Project 1501 North California Mixed Use Tentative Subdivision Condominium Map number 9529, including a tree drip line encroachment permit, environmental review, and density bonus application number Y19-068. And we will go ahead and ask staff, but before we do, we'll ask the Commission Secretary to check in with the Commission to see if anyone has any ex parte communication or any other items that they need to declare relative to this item.
Chair Lezak, if I may interject really quick regarding this item on the agenda, I am required to recuse myself from this hearing due to my proximity to the subject site. So, you know, I live downtown and I'm within 500 feet of the proposed project. So this precludes me from participating, and with that, I will drop off.
Yes, please adjourn yourself to the special room for folks who adjourn themselves. And given that this may be the only item tonight, we'll accept that you may want to leave the meeting and go somewhere more fun. But thank you very much for your attendance.
Have fun, you guys.
See you.
See ya.
Would any other commissioners like to report any ex parte communication or have any other comments before we move to the staff report? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and welcome Alan Carrion to the meeting and turn it over to you for a staff report. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Share my screen here. Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is Alan Carrion, Associate Planner, Community Development Department. The item before you is an application for a mixed-use project at 1501 North California. The applicant is Mr. David Bogstad of Loving Campos Architects, or LCA Architects. The project entitlements for this project include the aforementioned tentative subdivision map for condominium purposes, a density bonus application. The density bonus equates to 11.1% of the residential units. 3 units are proposed as very low income. It also includes design review, a tree drip line encroachment permit, and environmental review compliance. Quickly, the project is located at the south block of Shuey Avenue, Bonanza Street, and North California Boulevard. Site totals about 18,000 square feet. As you can see, the zoned mixed use, it should say mixed use downtown. This is just recently updated our maps, but the project site abuts 1 duplex zone property and a similarly zoned MU or mixed use downtown property here on Stowe Avenue. It's proposed as 27 units over approximately 10,200 square feet of ground floor office and retail area, and includes 3 affordable rate units for sale at very low income level. The project includes below grade parking facilities, which are accessed from Shuey Avenue. Has a common area terrace, a private roof deck for exclusive use of 1 of the units, and frontage improvements along Shuey, Bonanza Street, and North California. This item went before the Design Review Commission back in early September. Overall, the Design Review Commission felt it was well designed, had minor design related comments, and overall very positive feedback to the applicant. And at the conclusion of that hearing, the commission forwarded the project to the Planning Commission for review and decision on the subdivision map, tree drip line encroachment, and density bonus. If the project is approved this evening, it would go back to the Design Review Commission for final design review. If we look at the vicinity and the site from an aerial point of view, again, the general plan and zoning is mixed use downtown. This designation was created in part by the West Downtown Specific Plan adopted I think last year. The project site has a 50-foot height limit, and the maximum floor area ratio is 1.50, and that's based on the West Downtown Specific Plan. The current proposal, under density bonus, the applicant is proposing a floor area ratio of 2.56. Just to note here on the aerial, this is the yellow area is the duplex zone property. Here is 50-foot height limit, similarly along Bonanza, also zone mixed use downtown. That's the project site. Some quick street shots from the applicant's package. This is looking southerly from North California Boulevard. Current tenants of the site include Relax the Back Store, King's Jewelers, a salon, and Dudum Real Estate in this location. And this is, for reference, this is what was formerly Yogurt Castle next to Scott's Garden. This is a view from the intersection of Bonanza Street and Shuey. Surface parking lot on the west side of the site. And we can see the duplex property beyond, which has a parking area behind the fence, which is shown here. So this arrow here shows the alignment of the property line, just for reference. This is the conceptual rendering of the proposed project. Again, this was pretty well received by the Design Review Commission. This would constitute here the retail area, the residential lobby would be approximately mid elevation or midway on Bonanza, and back here is planned for office, but certainly it could go retail also. So it's 3 levels of residential over ground floor commercial. Rendering from the applicant's package. If you note here on the right side, Mr. Bogstad has gone ahead and illustrated perhaps a relationship of that other mixed-use downtown property eventually developing, excuse me, to illustrate its adjacency. This is the south elevation along Bonanza. Again, the residential lobby, office, and the retail area to the right. This is the east elevation or fronting North California. This is the west elevation facing Chewy Avenue. You can see here the building is a step back per the West Downs Pacific Plan, also as a requirement when adjoining residential portions of the Almond Chewy District as outlined by the West Downtown Pacific Plan. This is the entrance to the subterranean garage, service area for the roll-up trash up door, egress door, and the residential units above. This is north elevation, so a portion of this, there'd be a plane change right about here. This portion here would be abutting the mixed-use downtown zone properties, and this area here, step back, is the common area or terrace deck as open for common area open space for the residents. And here we have another balcony for this residential unit. This is the ground floor plan. Here we can see the relationship of the commercial spaces, the utility spaces, and the residential lobby with the adjoining streets. First floor level. On this level, or second level of the development, we have the affordable units. Be one studio, one bedroom unit, and 1 2-bedroom unit at very low income. Going up to the third floor, see the relationship of the units and the silo element here. And this did I skip one? Apologize. This is level 4, so this is the upper unit. We can see the stairs to the private roof here, and also this elevator, which also provides private access to this unit from the ground floor. So this elevator doesn't stop at levels 2 and 3. It goes from the ground floor to level 4, and also the roof. All units comply with the spatial requirements for open space and private open space. For example, these decks are compliant with the dimensional requirements of 5 feet minimum and 10 feet in the other direction, in any one direction. So it does meet those standards of the objective design standards. And finally, we come to the roof. Here's that elevator and also the staircase from the penthouse unit, as it's referred to in the plans. In terms of the tentative map, this would be what's commonly referred to as a one-lot subdivision. Purpose of the tentative map is to create residential ownerships of the units. The commercial areas and would be retained by the owner for lease or use. It also includes common areas for the residents. And in terms of the findings related to the tentative map, would have to be consistency with the general plan, specific plan, which based on staff's analysis, it does comply with the goals and policies of the general plan and also those outlined in the specific plan. Those are detailed in the draft resolution. Quite an extensive list, by the way. And also compliance with the Subdivision Map Act. And one finding of the Subdivision Map Act for a tentative subdivision map is opportunities for passive or natural heating and cooling. So this, the residential units in this project do have operable windows to allow that passive heating and cooling of the units. Staff believes these findings can be made in order to grant approval of the condo map for this project. The project is seeking density bonus, as I indicated, 11.1% or 3 of the 27 units. These would be available for sale to very low income. Based on the parameters, the project is eligible for 2 concessions or incentives, as it is referenced in state law. And those are defined as exemptions from local standards resulting in identifiable cost reductions. The applicant seeking a concession for building height from the 50-foot height limit to about 54 feet, relatively minor. The applicant did submit documentation to the chief building official in terms of cost savings of eliminating anchors and tie-down systems for maintenance of the building. The chief building official, Mr. Frank Kong, I believe is available for any questions you might have regarding the cost savings of that. Second exemption from local standards pursuant to the West Downs Specific Plan is parking separation. The residential and commercial parking stalls, of which 60 are provided in total and compliant with code. Technically, they're required to be separated by fences, gates, and summarily card readers for entry and exit. Elimination of these features would result in identifiable cost reductions for the project. Not to mention also the simply the amount of parking stalls that can be provided on levels, on lower levels 1 and 2. In terms of waivers, the applicant is, the project is eligible for an unlimited number of waivers, and waivers are defined as relief from standards that would physically preclude feasibility of the housing development. The first waiver, again, is the floor area ratio at a 1.50 FAR limit of the zoning, whereas 2.56 is proposed. And the second waiver is for building setbacks. Basically, this is a step back at the 40-foot height elevation for that portion of the building. Basically, 40 feet and above, it's supposed to be set back another 5 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet, depending on which street it's on. The setbacks from the Almond Shoey are observed and compliant from that district. However, the applicant is seeking relief from the setbacks from Shoey Avenue, Bonanza Street, and North California. In terms of the concessions and waivers, these would be the grounds that the Planning Commission or staff could deny. I'll just quickly read it here. The concessionaire said does not result in identifiable and actual cost reductions to provide for affordable housing costs. Second one is rather lengthy. The concession or incentive would have a specific adverse impact on the public health, safety, or the physical environment, and for which there is no, sorry about the typo, and for which there is no feasible method to satisfactorily mitigate or avoid the specific adverse impact without rendering the development unaffordable to low income and moderate income households. And the last one is that the concessioner incentive would be contrary to state or federal law. Staff considered these thresholds in looking at the concessions and waivers, and found that the project or the concessions and waivers would not violate any of these standards and thresholds. In terms of the tree drip line encroachment, I was going to go deep into these two trees number 1 and 2. One's an 11-inch valley oak, the other one's about 28, 29 inches. They're located at the shared property line with 1721 Stowe. The applicant did receive permission to apply for removal. However, Mr. Dudum, the owner, indicated reluctance in removing them, and the consequences thereof, and this would be the drip line of these trees. And close to this meeting, just this afternoon, Mr. Bogstad indicated that the building would be set back at the existing location here, instead of as close as a couple of feet. And previously proposed was to replace the retaining wall in the same location. Mr. Bogstad indicated that this retaining wall would now remain in place, and the new building, the new building would be located where this existing building wall is at the of the existing building. So this project would still require a tree drip line encroachment permit. Based on the arborist report indicating that there might be structural roots under this pavement here on the adjoining on the project site, and staff would maintain the conditions of approval to comply with the arborist report. However, would modify condition number 3 to revise the plans reflecting Mr. Bogstad's correspondence this afternoon in locating the building in this location. And this is the image that's contained in your in the draft package. As you can see, there was some question on what happens to this retaining wall at that location. So Mr. Bogstad did provide clarity with regards to his intent. And these are images from the arborist report. In terms of environmental review, this staff's analysis indicates that this project would qualify for statutory exemption under sections 15194 and 195. Those are for affordable housing. Some of the thresholds include population density, qualification, the availability of infrastructure, and those sorts of things. So it does qualify for that. It also qualifies for a categorical exemption as an infill project. Sites less than 5 acres, consistent with general plan and zoning, X the density bonus requests, but those density bonus requests are enabled by state law. And with that, staff's recommending the Planning Commission to approve the subdivision map, the tree drip line encroachment permit. Sorry about the removal typo there, and the density bonus concessions and waivers. We would strike this recommendation, instead revise condition 3, and recommends the Planning Commission find the project is consistent with California Environmental Quality Act for statutory and categorical exemptions. And with that, I'm standing by for any questions or comments you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alan, for a very good staff report. And we'll now go ahead and turn briefly to the commission to see if anyone has any questions of staff before we open the public comment. Anyone? We'll go with Commissioner Ward, please.
Okay, so I'm still confused about why the building needs to get taller in order to change kind of a safety mechanism with regard to maintenance. So can you explain that again to me with regard to the extra height in exchange for not putting those tie down things on the roof? Am I correct in that assumption?
That's correct. It's counterintuitive. I'm going to defer to either the applicant or Mr. Kong to respond to that question. I believe it's better. It's more in their wheelhouse to
Okay,
respond to, but it does equate in savings.
Just to reiterate, we do have the Chief Building Official, Frank Kong, available for questions of these nature. Also, the Housing Program Manager, Margot Ernst, in the event there are other questions, just to clarify for the commission.
Okay, well, I don't know who's supposed to answer it, but whoever is most appropriate would be excellent.
It seems like that might be a better question for the Chief Building Official. So thank you for joining us, Frank. We appreciate it.
Sure, my pleasure. For the record, my name is Frank Kong, Chief Building Official for the city of Walnut Creek. I was involved to evaluate the cost analysis for the roof protection systems by comparing two different strategies, with and without high increase. And as you can see from the roof plan, Ellen just showed everybody here, and there is quite a bit area, occupiable on the roof. And per California Building Code, any walking surface on the roof will need to be guarded around the building to protect the people from falling off from the roof, right? So the project architect provided the city with a cost analysis for two scenarios. Scenario one is with the 4 foot roughly height increase. This will allow the building to have a parapet around the perimeter of the wall of the roof, which will provide a protection as in compliance with the California Building Code as a guard around the walking surface of the occupiable area. At the same time, the project architect found conduct another cost calculation as without height increase. So in that case, because there's no parapet is allowed due to the high increase and the other floor, design, so they had to provide equipment and around the perimeter, which is basically the equipment is a kind of a pole, as a column, support a few kind of a arm. So the people, if they do some surveys on the roof, and the people can tie with that pole to protect themselves from falling off. And my duty is only evaluate the strategies and the locations necessary to provide such equipment and validate the overall, calculations about the in a cost calculation report. Based on my evaluation and conversation with the project architect, I feel the total, the cost analysis assumptions, the number they use there for the dollar per, linear foot calculation for the parapet, and also the roof anchorage for the equipment, which is used in a situation where there's no height increase. I think it's reasonable. I believe the total cost saving due to the with a height increase scenario will be roughly around $280,000. That's a total. So my job again, it is mainly evaluate the cost savings due to, with the option to increase the height. And other questions, I think regarding why we need to have increase, I think I would defer to the project architect, or Margot can offer other insight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I did review your calculations, and that seemed great. But my question really is, why can't the parapet system be installed on a roof system without a height increase? Why do we need 4 extra feet of height in order to have a parapet?
Well, I can believe I can partially answer that question. One of the requirements of the West Downtown Specific Plan is for the ground level commercial areas to have an 18-foot plate. That in turn influences how many floors you can squeeze above it. And that 4-foot increase allows, one is it allows the use of the roof deck, but also that 18-foot requirement is basically compressing the upper floors. So that in and of itself works out to about 54 or 50 feet plus just a little more for the parapet system.
So essentially it's like math. So we're looking at, in order to have a commercial space on the bottom floor, which has an 18-foot minimum height, and to get 3 floors above it of residential, we needed an additional 4 feet. Is that, so it doesn't really have anything to do with the roof system. It has to do with just the amount of space available for the units above it.
The 18-foot plate is a requirement of the code. That height was determined to be desirable for leasability of ground floor space, ground floor commercial space, and mechanical equipment systems also.
Okay, but I still don't understand the connection between this particular system of safety on the roof and why it needs 4 extra feet. It doesn't seem like there's a connection between those two things. It seems like it's just so we can get the 3 floors above the commercial 18-foot space now.
If I may,
Also,
I'm sorry, I just want to offer, in terms of the density bonus law and in terms of a concession, what qualifies for a concession, it's an identifiable cost reduction that would allow a project to exceed a development standard, in this case, the height standard. As we said, there's not a lot of, there is math involved, obviously, and the math involved was the identifiable cost reduction as evaluated by the chief building official. There is an identifiable cost reduction, and therefore a concession is permitted by state law. And in this case, the applicant is permitted to go above 50 feet, and also to achieve the density. The project is proposing 27 units, and to achieve that, and as Alan explained, to get all the units in as designed, having identifiable cost reductions entitles the project to at least, well, there are 2 concessions given the level of affordability. One of them is for height.
Okay, but it just seems to me that the cost savings is because of the difference in the safety equipment that's being put on the roof, and that has nothing to do with how tall the roof is. Is that, am I missing something here?
I would offer that you're not that you're missing something, but that the staff's interpretation of the state law is that as an identifiable cost reduction for the project as proposed, that the increase in height is for a safety measure, ultimately to provide or prevent for falling and as a hazard. And that's the standard by which we are evaluating the proposal.
Okay. I mean, I understand that the safety saving, the savings and the 2 safety issues. I just don't see why it has anything to do with the height. So, but thank you for that. That's my only question, I guess.
That's sort of one reason it's called an incentive to do a density bonus project, is to get that, to get a concession.
Thank you, Alan. We'll go ahead and move to Vice Chair Chris Selleck for the next question.
Alan, I just wanted to follow up. So the extra 4 feet in height is basically to accommodate the parapet wall around the building. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the analysis is saying that if we didn't have a parapet wall, you'd have to put other safety equipment up there, which would be another $200,000. So what I'm hearing you say is that it's a cost savings by allowing them to put the 4-foot parapet wall around the building, save that cost, but they have to exceed the height.
Correct.
Okay, yes. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, Commissioner Strongman.
Yes, a few quick questions. What is the measure 8 height limit for this property?
The Measure A height limit is 50 feet.
50 feet, okay. And can you explain the rainwater tower that's on the design? What's it for?
That's a
Go ahead.
That's an architectural feature proposed by the applicant, and he can go. He did describe it at the Design Review Commission hearing. I will defer to him during this presentation to cover that.
And could you confirm that the sidewalk widths on the property? I read that California would be 15 feet, Bonanza 10 feet, and Shuey 10 feet. Is that correct?
Yes, in certain portions, the sidewalk is wider than that.
The ball out.
Yeah, right. And that can be, 13 feet of public, 2 feet of, well, can be on site.
Okay.
To total 15.
And I guess my final question, is there really a market for studio condos?
Given the market these days, personally, I don't believe the applicant would propose it unless he couldn't sell it.
Okay. Just thank you.
Other commissioner questions? Oh, Commissioner Anderson has his hand up first.
Thank you. A couple of questions. On the FAR, the waiver, is that just simply waives the FAR requirement? I was kind of surprised that there's actually like a 70% increase, which seems, there's a modest benefit for the units, the affordable units. Is it just a simple waiver? You can, agree to any FAR after that, or is there some kind of proportionality associated with it?
I'm not sure what you mean by proportionality.
Well, you've got they barely make the minimum to get a waiver, but the waiver they're asking for a 70% increase over the original FAR. Is there some kind of stepping, or depending on how much they provide in order to get higher FAR?
No, there is no proportionality test. It just says
if they had said, we get a waiver, we'd like it to be 7. Is that still permissible, or?
It's relative to the project as proposed.
The test is whether a waiver physically precludes achieving the density.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
That's the test.
Okay. The second question I have is regarding the commingling of commercial and residential parking. I don't have a problem with allowing it, simply because it seems to me that your residential units are going to have the least parking requirement during the day, when at least offices and some retail would have their peak. It seems that they sort of have complementary peak parking requirements. So combining them seems to make some sense. Require some management and so forth, but it seems to me that that's a good idea. So I was kind of curious as to why the standard rule is to keep them separate.
The physical preclusion is the code standard. In this particular case, they would be commingled. Typically, you try not to mix residential and commercial, because commercial use residential, et cetera, and it goes back and forth. The intent of it, I believe, is to achieve basically what was like at the, I don't know if you've ever been to the Mercer lot or the Mercer development, where all the residential parking is behind a gate. And it's clear and distinct where commercial customers park and residential customers park. The stalls in this development would still be signed, but then they're commingled on the same floor.
I see.
Or same level. So separating it, we looked at that, and you would get into 1/4 of the stalls on one level would be residential. and physically separating them, the design would have run into physical constraints within the building footprint itself. It'd get really tight and probably not achieve the number of required parking stalls. So
Okay.
Okay.
I understand. Thank you.
And Mr. Pickett, I believe you had a question?
Go ahead, Bob. Thank you.
I do. The first question. First, I'd like to say I think it's a very gorgeous building. I think well done by LCA Architects. So thanks for that. But one of the things that can result in a denial of a project is an adverse impact upon the physical environment. What is the definition of physical environment that's applied to this provision?
That's a great question.
I only ask great questions, Alan.
Yeah, thanks. If a waiver resulted in environmental damage.
Right. I guess
So-
I would add that it's not well defined. That said, there are specific CEQA exemptions for affordable housing, and this project falls within those exemptions. So that's worth noting, given the fact that the city would have to prove that there was an environmental impact. So you've got a separate CEQA analysis that's saying you're either categorically or statutorily exempt from CEQA. The finding for harm to the physical environment the burden of that would be on the city, and you've already got CEQA analysis to the contrary. Now, I don't know that necessarily CEQA is completely dispositive of the issue, but I would imagine it is. It's evidence in that direction that there may not be an environmental issue.
Okay, so the reason I preceded this question with complimenting the building, if it were an ugly building, or if we found the setback concession a adverse effect on the physical environment, in other words, something we look at, that's to me is the physical environment. Is that a justifiable reason, or does it have to be an environmental, like killing a tree or a frog? Or can it be aesthetics? The physical environment, I mean, we've used that, I think we used it in the general plan a lot, referring to the physical environment. I think we call it built environment, but physical environment is the aesthetics of a project, an impact on the physical environment.
Right.
Well,
Go ahead, Al.
I was going to say aesthetics is a subjective matter. So what is deemed a negative looking building, does that rise to the level of a physical harm to the environment? Would be hard pressed to prove.
And I guess I would just add that the structure of density bonus law presumes that applicants may request and cities will grant a relaxation of development standards. So on one hand, you're being asked to relax a development standard. And on the other hand, you'd be trying to say that relaxing that development standard is, has a serious adverse effect, that the burden of proof would be on the city, not on the applicant.
Okay, fine. As I said, it's a good looking building, so I'm not concerned, but I think for future reference, that issue ought to be taken into serious account. I want to wade in just briefly on the building height issue. Because it's an attractive building, I personally don't have a concern about the height, but if I can just rephrase it so I'll make sure I understand it. On the roof, there has to be some safety measures, and one of it is the tie downs and that system, which costs a certain amount of money. An alternative safety measure is the parapet wall, and so that's the alternative, which is less expensive. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It's identifiable cost reduction.
Now, in addition to that, the parapet provides the project with the benefit of allowing now the roof space to be used for public benefit, tenant benefit, correct? If they didn't have the parapet, they couldn't put a roof area,
Correct.
private roof area. So the parapet is also allowing the developer to basically increase the usable space beyond the FAR. So they're getting bang for their buck for that 4 feet, because they're getting an entire, 10,000 square feet or 8,000 square feet of outdoor space on the roof that residents, or maybe one resident can use. Is that correct?
I believe that's an accurate conclusion. Yes.
As long as we're talking about that, is the roof deck area exclusively for the use of the penthouse? That's the way it sounds.
Yes.
One tenant. So the one tenant in the penthouse, which is the south or the east side of the 4th floor, that one unit gets exclusive use of the roof deck. Correct?
Correct. Yes.
On to parking. Okay, it says that signs will be installed to designate authorized use. So is that saying, and it looks like from the plans, that each stall will say Bob Pickett, or will say resident, or will say Dudum Real Estate, or they'll be designated by writing on a wall or on the floor or something? Is that what that in your staff report?
It would be signed either for residence use or for commercial use.
Okay, so resident and commercial.
Right. Not clear. Perhaps Mr. Bogstack can weigh in whether the idea is to assign it by user. For example, the retail use or the office use. Staff typically opposes that because you find at certain shopping centers, certain stores like to reserve the spots in front of their tenant space, and staff would be opposed to that. Historically been opposed to it too.
And maybe, I hope you have an answer to this, and you might have to refer to the applicant, but what is the parking management program there? How are they going to manage and enforce the use as signed? I mean, personally, I hate to admit it, but sometimes if I can't find a parking place that says reserved for Ruth's Chris, I pull in there anyhow because I want to go to Container Store. People will do that. What kind of enforcement policy have you discussed with the applicant?
I have discussed that with the applicant.
Can anybody park in this parking place? In other words, if I wanted to go to the new restaurant kitty corner from this, and I forget where McCovey's used to be, and I forget what's in there now, but if I wanted to go to that restaurant, parking was challenging. I could pull down Shuey and go into this garage and park there and walk across the street?
That'd be the owner's discretion to enforce that or not.
Okay, and how would they enforce? You didn't talk to that. Okay, so
I don't have that.
Maybe Mr. Bogstad or somebody from the applicant's team can put that in your pocket and answer it when we get there. Okay, on the floor area ratio, we talked about that a little bit, and it is a sizable increase, although architecturally well done. But one question: historically, we've always had, we've created a barrier between floor area ratio and residential densities, and we've defined, we've had trouble mixing them. We've had floor area ratios as the commercial and the density, and when we had mixed use project, it was always a little confusing. And it looks like in this particular case, we're taking the entire building, residential and commercial, and developing a floor area ratio for the project in its entirety, including the residential. Is that something specific to this project? Is it associated with the West Downtown? Or why are we changing the methodology? And this is, I think, the first time I've seen this done in Walnut Creek.
The I know the West Downtown specific plan includes the gross floor area of the building. I'm not sure what year that was changed, but I was doing some research recently, and one of my fellow staff members asked about the floor area ratio of the Mercer, and I had pointed out, well, back then we didn't count residential as part of the FAR. With the new direction or the revised direction that we're going in, as far as West Downtown and the remainder of the city, the floor area ratio is counting the residential and the commercial in sum to address the bulk of the building.
Okay, so that is a change in our ordinances, or is it just for the West Downtown area, or is it going to apply to the North Downtown also, or how is that going to be applied in the future to the city?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Dindernagel.
Yeah, I would just offer Commissioner Pickett the mixed use land use designations. So we have a MUR, MUC, and now a new one, MUD, which was created as part of the West Downtown specific plan. It focuses on the FAR because we're trying to encourage a mix of uses in these types of projects, and that's what the designation and the subsequent zoning, the underlying zoning, encourage. So the FAR does include the gross floor area of the building. There is mention in both, or in all three cases, MUR, MUC, MUD, that the FAR can translate to a population density of such and thus and such, but it's not a residential density, to be clear, as we typically calculate it. However, the underlying density, the underlying zoning does clarify the calculation for density for each of those zones. So the MUR, MUC, and MUD, they happen to share the same abbreviations, MUR, MUC, MUD, at the general plan and zoning levels. But my point is that we define the density specifically within the zoning, and we allow for the calculation of the FAR for all gross floor area of the buildings in those mixed use land use designations.
Is it possible, and I was not on the West Downtown committee, but is it possible that the standard of 1.5 FAR that was developed for this area neglected to consider the fact that when we had mixed use, we were going to be stacking a whole bunch of square footage on top of our commercial space? And maybe it shouldn't have been 1.5, maybe it should have been 2 or more?
Well, there were provisions to allow for an increase in FAR for sites that were, I believe, measured 20,000 feet or greater in size. That could have an automatic bump up to, I believe, 2.5 for mixed use development. This project site, as it turns out, is 18,000 and change. It's below that 20,000 foot threshold, and therefore would not qualify for that automatic increase to 2.5. And so that's why the artificially low 1.5 is being held, because the site is smaller than the threshold established by the West Downtown plan of 20,000 feet lot area.
Yeah, so doing some quick math here. So if we stuck with the 1.5 FAR and we have an 18,000, say just rounded off 20,000 square foot site, that's 30,000 square feet would be the maximum square footage allowed. And we got 10,000 of commercial. That means that if we stuck with the 1.5 FAR, we could get 20,000 feet of residential above the commercial, but they're going for obviously substantially more than that. Is that kind of a accurate analysis of that?
Back a napkin rough, yes, I would agree with that. But I would also add to that we are then also including the density bonus, state density bonus law, which obviously allows for an increase above whatever the thresholds established locally are.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so there's a public art in lieu fee that they're planning to pay. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and
Yeah.
do we know that? I don't recall seeing it in the staff report. Was that mentioned in there, or is that calculated later?
It's calculated later. The fee is based on I believe 1% of the construction costs, and that'll be at building permit phase, based on the valuation of the building.
Okay.
That'll be vetted through our building division chief building official.
Yeah, on relatively small projects like I consider this a relatively small project. I think that's a good strategy, but I always worry about that those funds actually get used to something in the vicinity. And I think that we don't have a restriction on those art funds. I just want to, can you go through the process? These go into a bank account somewhere, and we have X hundreds of thousands of dollars in a fund for artwork. Can you explain the process for seeing that these funds get reasonably used in a beneficial way to the community?
The public art fund is administered by the Leisure Center, staff from the Leisure Center, and though the funds can go towards actual public art on the street or the administration thereof. The arts department is for example, they print brochures and hold shows. So those funds are used for all sorts of purposes in addition to actually placing public art itself. It's not within staff's discretion to.
It's the administration thereof clause that I don't like. I mean, that's just a political thing. I think we ought to build art with it. That's not for us to solve tonight. I'm getting down to the end of my questions. Trash pickup, has that been considered in your evaluation of this project?
Yes, it has. The trash bins would be accessed from the Shuey Avenue elevation, rolled out into the street and picked up, and then rolled back into the little cubby hole they've got there.
Right. That's just the right of the garage entrance, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, so that sounds like a pretty common thing. Did you look at all at moving in and moving out of the site, how they're going to accommodate that with street parking? Where's a moving van going to park for people to come in and come out 27 times at least the first year, and times every year thereafter?
Spaces can be blocked off through our traffic engineering division with a permit for move in, move out. Does have parking stalls in front of the project, so that would be the means by which moving vans could come or go.
Okay, so they could get, I think, is it an encroachment permit that they get to be able to do that? Temporary encroachment permit or something?
I believe it's a parking stall permit.
Okay, so it's like if they have a construction zone, when we have a construction zone downtown, they'll block off 3 or 4 places for the cement trucks to pull in and dump their loads. So it'd be similar to that.
Yes, it would be. Okay. Same means.
So that's how that would get, that can work. Okay. All right, so the applicant had a few things that he's going to respond to, and I think that's the end of my questions for Mr. Carrion. Thanks, Alan. Good job on the staff report. And
we had a feedback from the senior engineer on staff, Kathleen Tarantieff, who clarified it's a parking permit as the answer to your last question.
Parking permit, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Pickett, for all your insightful questions. Are there any other commissioners that have questions of staff right now? Okay, so I just have a couple of quick ones. I'd like to ask a couple of quick questions of Margot Ernst because she made time to come before us tonight. Thanks for being with us. Margot, are you there?
I am, yeah, this is Margot.
Hi, so I have a question about the city's inclusionary housing ordinance. And if a developer were to propose a project of 27 units, I believe this is intended to be condominium for sale, so it's not a rental project. If you did 27 for sale units, what would you be required by the city's inclusionary ordinance, housing ordinance, without any density bonus to provide in terms of affordable housing?
For the condos, for the ownership units, you would for a 27 unit project, you would need to provide 2.7 units or the equivalent of 2.7, which might be, and those would be affordable to moderate. So it would either be 3 units affordable to moderate or 2 units and a portion of a fractional in lieu fee for the 0.7. Oh no, actually, I'm sorry. At that point, we round up, so it would be 3 units. That's for
Okay, so this particular project, though, they're providing 3 units and getting a huge benefit from the density bonus, but that's because they're not doing the kind of units you're describing. They're doing very low.
Mhm. And we do have that option in our inclusionary ordinance too, and that would actually result in, I think, one point something units if they were going to do the same income level under the inclusionary ordinance. And in fact, they are. So these units also do meet the inclusionary requirement as well as qualify them for density bonus.
So if I understand what you're saying, that they're satisfying both your inclusionary housing ordinance and getting a state density bonus. And if I do the math and it's 0.6, or 6% of the units need to be very low, then they need to have 1.6 units. So they need to add 1.4 more units to get the density bonus that they're looking for under the various criteria that they're getting. So help me understand the math. I mean, inclusionary housing is just a subsidy that a developer gives to the city or to the community by virtue of paying a difference between what the market rate would be for housing and what this subsidized value would be to someone who's doesn't qualify, couldn't meet market rate. So if someone wanted to be a very low affordable unit person in this particular development, how much would that subsidy be?
That I can't answer just off the top of my head. You mean what's the construction gap, the subsidy required to construct the unit?
No, I mean, it's really just a gap between the market rate value of the unit and the rate that is the affordable rate at a very low.
Right.
So that's calculable based on your tables each year. And you did a draft agreement. So you would have calculated and know exactly that, let's just say for the difference between market rate and very low, in this case, maybe that's $1 million, like a very low, is 300 and something. These units probably have $700 or $800 a month in DRE, HOA fees. So there's some cap, it's 1.3 million or something. So it's $1 million subsidy per unit. There's 1.4 units. So for 1.4 million additional dollars of subsidy through this program, they're buying the difference between an FAR of 1.5 and 2.7. I think that's kind of the position the thing I'm trying to get here is what exactly is the difference? Because density bonus is a very great way of adding more affordable housing to the community. And I think it's a great way to build this awesome project in a site that might not otherwise meet that. But I'm trying to understand, for that difference. I mean, so the analysis that I'm walking through, is that reasonably fair from your perspective?
Well, it is, but I will say we haven't calculated either. We don't have in the agreement, we're not looking at the actual price of the for sale affordable units or the market rate units. We're just identifying the affordable 2 levels and other components. So we won't know until these are constructed what that difference is going to be. And it doesn't really weigh into any of the other parameters around density bonus. It can vary. It obviously varies based on what the market is. So our inclusionary requirement doesn't change based on the market prices, and neither does density bonus. And I will also add, density bonus is a great opportunity to create more affordable housing, but it has another benefit too, which is to create overall an increase in housing, whether it's market rate or affordable. So you get The bonus that you get are market rate units, obviously. So you're getting both affordable units and an increase of density, which is an increase in the housing stock just overall, which is part of what the state is incentivizing. It's incentivizing both. The additional market rate units are partially intended to help make it more affordable, to provide the affordable units. One thing to note with this project is they're not actually utilizing the full extent of the bonus that they qualify for, and they're not mandated to under state law. They're using a portion of the 35% that they would otherwise qualify for, but they are also, with that affordability, they're buying, so to speak, the rights to a certain number of concessions, along with waivers of development standards.
Okay, thank you. That was extremely well said. I appreciate that, because my sense is that this is a great use of density bonus, but I think everyone needs to understand how that works and where that upside is. And you did a very good job of explaining that. And it's unfortunate that they couldn't utilize that additional bonus that you're describing. And I think that really that's not because that they don't have a great team who would do that if they could, but I think that they're struggling with Measure A and the height limits and the location that they're in. So thank you very much for clarifying that. That's an excellent point. I appreciate it. So that's basically all I have for staff right now. I do have questions, Alan, that I want to talk to the applicant about in terms of the parking, similar to some of the concerns that Commissioner Pickett had. But I think you did a good job of probably responding to the question at your staff level. And so I'll go ahead, and no other commissioner comments at this point, I'll go ahead and close the questions from the commission staff. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and open the public comment portion, which starts with the applicant and the applicant's presentation. So we'll go ahead and invite David Bogstad to step up with his presentation. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. My name is David Bogstad. I'm president of LCA Architects. We're a local Walnut Creek firm who don't know us. And so thank you for joining us tonight. Let's see if I can open this into one page here and do it this way. This is not, it's sort of funny where we talk about developers. This is not really a developer. It's the Dudum family. Jack and Sylvia are going to reside in this upstore area. They're going to create a great garden up here. And we teased in the design review meeting, it's probably the only place where local vegetables will be sold in the farmer's market that are grown in downtown. So this is the water tower on the edge. So the Dudum family is involved. Jack and Sylvia and their two sons and daughter. Julie runs Dudum Real Estate, and that will be in this part of the area. And so that will be, it's more of a family.
We're not seeing anything. Are we supposed to be seeing some of our screens?
You're not seeing anything. Okay.
Please share
other than you, Dave.
Oh man. Okay. So you do this. I don't have, it's on my page here. Let's see.
David, we made you a co-host, so you should have the rights to share your screen.
Let's see. I do this every day, so. But let's see this.
Yeah, green arrow at the bottom.
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't have that in my thing here.
We do have the presentation locally stored. If I could ask for just a moment to get the technical.
Yeah, why don't you do that here?
Pardon me one moment.
Yeah, maybe I do this. Oh, you know something? I can do this. Here, hold on. Share. Do you see it now? Bob?
Yeah,
yes.
We see it. Go ahead, David.
I'm seeing it.
Okay, sorry guys. Didn't pull my screen down all the way. A little late here. Anyways, the Dudums are a family. They own a series of restaurants in downtown throughout the Bay Area. So it's not a typical developer. This is someone who's investing in the community and everything else. So that is something that a little different than other projects here in Walnut Creek. They wanna, let's see, oops, back. They wanna, I'm not in my screen, am I here? Oops, sorry guys. I have this all. Anyways, this is a gateway to the city and how to make it in between the lyric and the new thing. We'll keep on going. We'll get back to this one. Just trying to make it fit within the city and be contextual. This is, we sort of wanted to take the Dudums, and I went through a series of colors and images to do that. The Walnut Creek Central Hotel with the gabled ends, the Shadelands Fruit Farm Estate, where my daughter had her wedding reception, Walnut Creek Meat Market with that. So those are the images they put together. They also said on the lower floor, they wanted to do a deli and a high-end deli to be able to do that. So I'm thinking post-COVID, we'd be done with the design review or the planning commission hearing and go there for a deli sandwich on the way home. So that's just something that theming through this so that could work that way. This is the idea of the water tower, being able to collect rainwater environmentally, and then also the round of the front facade, sort of like at the Lesher Performing Arts. But that genre, that being contextual, so many buildings get built in Walnut Creek that could be built anywhere. But we try to make the buildings look like they've had some thought process. So when it comes to affordable housing and making the state density bonus, you probably, as you can see, probably need to have a PhD. This is complicated. We do this all over the Bay Area. And so we're doing condos, a for sale product. We do have the option to rent. And we know from COVID, we have to have all the options because you never know, interest rates may be 8% in 2 years when this is done. So it would be do that. So anyways, that's the aspect of a condo project with low income, very low income housing. What would be low income housing for Walnut Creek? For one person, that would be someone who would make $45,000 a year. Who would that be? A barista, assistant manager at AT&T or Ross, a store manager at our local boutique stores, administrative assistant, or a janitorial worker in one of our many office buildings. So we're creating local housing, and hopefully in local housing where people can just walk. But you see the numbers where how to make that work. Regarding the tree, we've gone back and forth and everything else. And John Traverso and I have walked the site and looked at this tree, and I believe it fits. John's latest comment, today was, keep this wall in place. And we're going to do that. We're going to build the building back here. This is the Relax the Back store. We're going to take out this concrete to get more air to the roots right there. John, when we're demoing, can go and look at it and treat anything. But John thinks we can save this tree, so I think that's well worth the effort. If you see this building go up and it sort of sets back, I think it works well with the tree. Height increase. So one of my jobs as the president of LCA is to review and sit in all the cost budget things for builders to come in. And one of the things that we saw, two big items, especially at 1716 Lofts, that is right by City Hall there, is the C3 basins. Those are very expensive. And then also the davit system that you have to put around. You can lower the parapet to just 8 inches, but you have to put these all over the place for OSHA. And it's not only the cost of construction, you have to have a 3,000 pull every year on these things. So not only do you have to install them, but the maintenance cost of putting them in as it goes on and on and on is a continual cost. It's like having an elevator where it costs you, $20,000 a year to just maintain it. These are an expensive endeavor. And then also it's expensive every time your mechanical equipment gets serviced, everything else people have to rope off and stuff. So by putting a parapet all the way around the building, your maintenance and your dues per month drops substantially. So it's a twofold thing. It allows the building to have the correct proportion, but be able to do these things. And then this is, the Dudums are coming from a large house in Danville with a big backyard, and this was one of the compromises between Jack and Sylvia to be able to have a nice garden and everything else. But to be able to have an urban environment, I think is important. So concession number one, a height increase. State came up with these things so we could get the units. And I think Margot did an excellent explanation. And I thank Margot and Frank and Ethan and Alan for going through all these things. But it just allows more housing stock. And we desperately need the housing. And we finish buildings and they, people move in. So it's just a great need, especially a for sale project. Not that many for sale units here in Walnut Creek. Parking concessions. Mr. Pickett, I knew you would ask me these questions. So we would have all these parking metered. And so you'd have the commercial meter for 2 hours. So you want to come in and go across the street for dinner, have Brazilian steaks. You can go do that and you have a 2-hour visitation and you can come and go and sort of that evening commercial, everything else works. Residential parking, they would have no limit and they could be in their parking spaces, but then they could also park in the commercial spaces from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. So just a variety of things. Since I've graduated architecture school, to be able to joint use parking is a great benefit for the community. And I think this really helps to make the housing work and also the commercial work. With a Dudum real estate, they're realtors, they're not in the office, they're out selling. So it sort of skews the number high with commercial spaces. And then, work from home, how that all works is going to really reduce the commercial need. But being able to share it with the thing, you see that in the Mercer where they have the little lights that go on. I think that's a big benefit. Next is the FAR. One of the things why they did the FAR and increased it so that you could increase housing stock. And one of the things on this property is it's one of those small pieces that the state had in mind that would probably not develop without an FAR input because it doesn't pencil. But because of this pencils, and then you can put in the affordable housing. So that's one of the waivers that I think they put in, and Frank and Margot worked through this with us. But I think that's a real benefit. Almond Shoey setbacks waiver number 2. I think, around for our neighbors, I think we made the setback right. But in here, the setbacks around the other building, you see the lyric, it goes straight up. It really isn't set back. This was a thing that was put in after. And so I think that works with the plan to be able to do that and have these setbacks waived. Again, it helps the thing. It doesn't also, by setting it back, it makes the building look funny. And so this is a setback that, again, the state put in to be able to do that. Right here, again, Mr. Pickett, it's a trash pickup. This would have a meter that would not allow the parking during that time. And they just wheel it out and be able to put the trash right here. Again, I drive by the Mercer every day and they do that I think that's on Tuesday mornings. So that works well, and we have a separate pace. The other thing is on this for loading zone for the moving in and moving out, you can go and take 2 or 3 spaces and be able to do that. The other thing that you see on this property, there's no overhead utilities. That is part of the process of burying all this stuff, making that a little more secure. So that works also that way. Environmentally, it's close to BART. It's for sale housing is needed. The demographics are needed for the thing. It's proximity to downtown. And boy, if the Dudums can do that, we really do need a deli close that we can just drive in, pick up stuff, and go from there. Questions, comments?
Okay, well, thank you, David, for your presentation. Go ahead and turn it back to the commissioners at this point to see. Hold on a second. Excuse me for a second, try to get my window just right here. There we go. Okay, so commissioners, we'll turn it back to you to see who wants to start with questions of the applicant. Commissioner Ward.
Hi, thanks for that great presentation. I have a better understanding of the project now, so I appreciate that. But I did have a question about the residential parking. So there's 27 residential units and 22 residential spaces, and I'm wondering if they're linked to the units or if they're going to be purchased separately, or how they're going to be assigned and who's going to get the parking and how that's determined.
Yeah, it's undetermined right now, but on some of our projects in the past, you purchase your parking spot and you have that option, or you can go and joint share. So it old school says, oh, that doesn't work, but new school people do that and ride share and everything else. And so that's the difference between before and after. So it's something that works real well. And we're doing projects in Berkeley with 0 parking. So.
Yeah, I'm an HOA attorney by day, so I do understand that many different models work. I just wondered if you'd decided what you were going to do and how that was going to work. But okay.
Still to be determined with the Dunams.
All right, thank you. I think that's my only question. Thanks.
Others? Next, Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you. I had 2 questions. I think you probably answered the first, which was like Commissioner Pickett, I was curious about the entire roof area being allocated to 1 unit. It makes more sense if that's actually the owner of the building. And did I understand correctly that your intention or their intention is to actually use it as a working garden for some of the restaurants and so forth?
Yeah.
So I assume that structurally it's all designed to take large planters up there and so forth.
That's correct. And you have to design it when you start the building, but relatively, if you design it from the beginning, it isn't really that big of a cost.
Right.
But if you design it after the fact, then it is. But the big thing is you have to have the elevators working to bring up the dirt.
Right.
That.
I was a bit confused because the way the drawings are sort of indicate, tables and lounge chairs and so forth. It looks like a great party space, but I think it makes more sense to allocate it to 1 unit if it's actually being used as a working garden. The other question I had deals with the resolution, page 6. There's a finding. I can get it here. Regarding future passive or natural heating and cooling opportunities. And one item there, I understand the operable windows, like, if people use them, that is helpful. But there's one sense here. So the project design includes a common area which is located on the north side of the building. I assume that's the podium deck.
That's correct.
Outside of the north side of the building that will be passively heated and shaded depending on season. That's true, but it will be passively heated in the summer and passively cooled in the winter. On the north side of basically on the north side of a 3-story building. It's not going to get any sun in the wintertime when you need it, and it's going to get plenty of sun in the summertime when you don't. So I'm kind of curious as to how you think that's going to be passively cooling or heating that space.
So that would be a good question, but the thing that we've learned from some of these, like 1716 lofts, the courtyard, similar situation where you'd say, no, the sun's never going to get in there and everything else, it's not going to work. It works well. So maybe one time I could just take you in there and see that. It's one of those things, how you set the building back and stuff and how it, the sun angle works. It does do that. The key element is it keeps the wind out. One of the things I moved here in 1984, and one of the things that I missed from Southern California is, in the evening, the fog moves in, or it used to be, the fog would move in and the wind would blow, and it blows from the east. And so when this is a U-shaped building, it keeps that wind from coming in. So it's still air, and in the winter or in the summer, it works well. And so that's one of the benefits of the courtyard in that regard.
Okay, again, maybe it's just semantics. I worked in passive research and analysis for many years. And, I would not consider, a windscreen to be passive heating and cooling as such. I guess I'm just not sure that particular sentence really relates to the finding. At least the definitions I would typically use. But I will leave that to the staff to work out whether that in fact works. And that's all I had.
Okay, Commissioner Pickett.
There we go. Okay. Okay, Dave, I think you pointed this out, but I just want to clarify it. The PG&E service is underground on Shuey. That it's an underground transformer, not one of those big ugly things in front, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Underground.
All right. On the parking, let me just go a little deeper into that. How do you, I mean, what is the plan for enforcing it? Again, I see the propensity of people in the city of Walnut Creek to violate whatever rules you might want to come up with. They aren't going to pay attention to Dave Bogstad or the Dudums or anybody else if it says residential parking and I want to go to the movie theater and that parking lot's full. What happens if I park there? What do they plan? What do the Dudums plan to do to manage the parking in this location?
Yeah, just like in the Mercer, and we just, you steal from Success. They have the little lights, and Broadway Plaza has the same thing. You see the lights, the green lights on, the red lights on, and if you violate that, then you come in and you get a ticket for that. So that is something how you mitigate that aspect, and it's successful. So
in Broadway Plaza, those lights just tell you there's a vacant stall there.
right, but in Mercer,
so if I'm a resident and I live in one of the units and I say I reserve, however they determine they're going to assign residential stalls, and you've already told us that they're going to identify residential stalls versus commercial stalls, and so I have the right to park in stall number 27. And I come home from work and Peter Lezak wanted to go out to dinner that night and he parked in stall number 27. So how are they going to keep Peter out of that?
Yeah, if I'm in, so the high thing of electronics and stuff. So I would have in my car, I would have a fob and it would recognize my car and it would recognize my car being in park 27. If you parked in park 27, you would say, no, that's an illegal car. And then enforcement would come in and ticket it or tow it. So it's just one of those, it's all the electronics of your car and your fob and how the thing works for the resident versus commercial versus just Joe Blow.
So the enforcement is not city enforcement, it's private enforcement.
It's private enforcement.
And so somehow that guy, Peter Lezak, when he parked in my stall, would get somebody would know that he did that and would come over right away and give him a ticket, because they got to be there within an hour or Peter's done with dinner and or the movie's over and he gets away with it. And I'm
North Main Towing would have them towed.
Okay, that was another question. Is there room to get a tow truck in the garage there?
Yeah.
Was the vertical height enough with sprinklers and all the pipe? Usually they're 8 feet. I mean, clearances in garage are usually 8 feet net.
Yeah, and the lower floor, because it's accessible, you have the higher clearance. And what I've learned, Bob, is that we put the sprinklers on the edges and shoot them out from the sides, so you have better clearance and you don't have people nicking the fire sprinklers.
Okay, let's see if I can get away from cars for a while. On the second level, there's that podium deck that is on what's that? The north side. Is anything use planned for that? I'm not quite sure I understand.
No, it's just a passive area. We'll put barbecues and everything else for people to gather. Right now, and you don't want people to gather, but no, that's just the residents for residents use to be outside.
Okay. So it is intended to be used by people and not just a big dust gathering place out there. Okay.
No, and in 1716 Lofts, we put a waterfall and planting and everything else, palm trees, and so it becomes sort of a Zen place, a contemplative place. So it's a place to read a book and everything else. It's well used there.
Yeah. Okay. In regards, this is kind of a general question, maybe as an architect who does a lot of buildings, you know, we've been going over our, you know, a lot of things about traffic and that kind of stuff. Mobility, what do we call that plan? Mobility, thinking mobile or whatever, whatever we call that thing. Anyhow, so what perked my attention here is we were talking about operable windows to get some natural ventilation. How does that correlate with all of the air pollution created by the vehicles on California and Bonanza? I mean, to me, there's a conflict of interest there. We're saying that closer to heavy transportation corridors is bad for residential development, and here we're promoting openable windows, where we've got one of the busiest, or maybe the busiest street in Walnut Creek, next to Ignacio.
Yeah.
So how does that foot from an architectural, environmental standpoint? How does that make sense to put windows when you got air pollution?
So number one is Title 24 requires us to have air filtration in the unit. So you have that filtered air coming through here, a slot in the building. Two is what we found is people open their windows when they get home. So during the late evening through the night. And so that is when you have the least amount of traffic. And so that sort of balances it off, is that during the day, people close their windows for cooling and everything else. And then during the evening, they open it up and let the fresh air come in when they get home. So, these are expensive units, so people are working. And so that's one of the ways where, environmentalists say, yeah, it's still important to have operable windows. It's still important to do that, because during the times where you have the least pollution, people have the windows open.
I think there's maybe some logic in that, but something that also we get the other side of the story. Don't build apartments near freeways because people die from smog. Okay, last question I have is, I was looking at your roof plan, and I don't know what sheet it is, but you showed on two different sheets.
2.4B.
Yeah, that one. Okay, I'm looking at that, and you're showing the mechanical equipment. Where is the parapet wall? Because you've got all of the mechanical equipment outside of the improved penthouse garden, and I was believing that the parapet wall was built just around that greenhouse penthouse garden, which means all the mechanical equipment is outside of the parapet wall, which would necessitate the davits out there for people to go out and work. Am I, or is the parapet wall someplace else I'm not seeing?
No, if you go to A 2.5, you start to see the darker wall. Maybe I could have highlighted in yellow, but the dark line is the parapet generally around there. So it's the outside of the building.
Oh, okay, I see that. So that's the parapet, and then there's a secondary wall or something else.
That's probably planters. It's landscape architect still needs to enrich that a little bit, but how that's done in the screening, myriad of ways to do this properly.
Okay, so that more interior type of dark line on this particular page would maybe be a screen to prevent or to screen the mechanical equipment from the people who are using the garden area.
That's correct.
Okay, and the parapet that we're talking about saving all this money is the darker line that's to the perimeter of the building. Okay, I understand that now. Great, those are all my questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, other commissioner questions? Vice Chair Chris Selleck.
So David, just one question. So how do you access that small strip of land between your building and the adjacent properties to the north?
That is where we have our C3 basin, and it's accessed. Let me see. I'm just trying to get the right page number. If you go to A 2.1A, there's a door on the California side and there's a gate on the other. And basically it's there for we have the gas meters there, water sub meters, and then the C3 basin, working with engineering, your fine engineering staff, Kathleen, to go through that and have that so that they can clean out, make sure the basin's working. And then it has an access pathway to be able to go and service that. But basically that's back a house that fills up with water, you know, and so now learning and doing these C3 basins, I sort of wanted away from the public, sort of locked away, because yeah, I have grandchildren, you can drown in you know, there's a foot of water during 18 inches of water during heavy rain. So that really fills up.
So then that area is accessed off the sidewalk through the gate there in the fence.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Other commissioner questions? Commissioner Strongman? Okay, I guess that leaves me. So David, I just have probably just a few. My biggest concern probably has to do with shared spaces between what is perceived to be a homeowners association and the commercial ownership group. And I think my biggest area of concern is probably the parking lot. And I probably don't need to be concerned about the parking ratio and what owners are going to do, because they're going to make decisions about parking based on the market and whether they're comfortable with it. I'm more concerned about protecting the commercial parking spaces since they're not separated. And I understand why they're not being separated. Comfortable that given, I understand what you've shown us and the plan to meter these, but I don't see that in the actual plan set, and I don't see that in the conditions of approval. And so I would like to see that there be a parking plan and parking agreement be in place and be reviewed by the city and be included in the CC&Rs prior to the issuance of a building permit. Is that something you think the ownership would be okay with?
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that. I mean, it's on A 2.6 and A 2.7, we list all the residential and how that's all done. So that doesn't seem that big of a deal.
I mean, it seems like you've thought this through, and I appreciate that. I mean, it's not that you haven't shown us. It's that I just like to know that in our role that we're at least protecting the public's interest in having commercial spaces be available at that time. And frankly, I don't know that we need necessarily to have the city be party to that agreement. It's probably better to let them review it just to know that there is one. My concern though is how, I mean, I may not be a Department of Real Estate HOA attorney by day, but I can tell you that the Department of Real Estate, when they review this, is going to have a concern about how the shared ownership, because this is going to be a shared ownership space. Like there's going to be common interest development is going to have some maintenance responsibilities, but so is the commercial development. And so where do those funds, like if somebody pays a meter, I assume that goes to the commercial development side. And then, you know, the Department of Real Estate, I would think, is going to want us to protect, you know, the interest of the future homeowners, is going to want to understand how and in what way that they are being guaranteed the maintenance responsibilities by the commercial development. So I don't want to speak to what agreements that the Department of Real Estate might require to know that, but in the separation of these two ownership groups, have you considered that?
Yeah, and Julie Dudham's a realtor, you know, owns all these, I forget how many agents she has. And yeah, she's thoroughly gone through this, and you need a good attorney, and that's important, but it's a shared agreement between ownership of the commercial space, the Dudhams, and then the homeowners.
Okay, well, I guess what I'm suggesting and maybe the assistant city attorney can help me with this as we get there, is adding a condition that just asks that a draft of that agreement be shared with the city and be included in the CCNRs, referenced in the CCNRs, and be reviewed prior to, in this case, that would be prior to the approval of any, in this case, I guess it would be building permit, because there is, would there be a final map in this case? There's a tentative map, there would be a final map, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay, so it could be prior to final map. And I just like to see that the community sees that and is aware that that's happening for their protection. Doesn't sound like that's a big problem. My other question relates to electric vehicle charging. And, you know, the company that I work for during the day has recently built a building similar to this, and more closer to Silicon Valley because that's where we do business. But a lot of folks have come in, and we have a very limited electrical vehicle chargers because that was the only requirement. And I'm not sure what the requirement is here. Maybe you could speak to that. But we had a lot of people say that we wouldn't be interested in buying unless there was electrical vehicle charging. And I see that as being a more and more important thing in the future for owners. And it's a hugely important thing to me because I'm a believer that these buildings should have that kind of infrastructure. Just as you said, it's much easier to design and cheaper to design and install up front than it is to add later. So is there a plan for electrical vehicle charging? Is that something that you've considered? I know it's way too early to have designed anything, but have you thought about that?
Yeah, and with the governor putting in the law or the goal of 2035, it would probably be all residential units would have access to electric charging, and then a series of the commercial would do that with a metered electric charge. But those are the things as part of the electrical design for the construction documents. We would include that all.
So at this point, you're just that's something that you'll deal with when you get there relative to what the Title 24 electrical building code says at that point. Do you think, I mean, right now we're in the 2019 code, but the upcoming code is going to make certain types of buildings. I think this may have some exemptions, but we're going to hit a net zero kind of Title 24 world. Do you think that you'll have construction documents submitted before we hit that?
I believe so, but we're going to plan for the future so that we're not skewed on these things. So we're doing net zero buildings right now. So it's a math issue and how to balance that out and make that all work. And then also a technological issue because these chargers are I did the Porsche dealership on North Main and they have an electric Porsche. And so those chargers are much better than other chargers. So how that all works is something as we produce into construction documents and budget through this is how to make that all work.
Okay, I mean, I just know that you don't particularly have solar arrays on the building, and a building of this type, you know, has certain exemptions relative to that. And I guess this is a more just commentary on my part than really a question. So I'll just move on from this because I guess the truth of the matter, and you've answered that question, is that the building code, you'll meet the building code requirements at that time. And I think that's all that's appropriate. I think that's substantially my bigger comments. I think you've answered most of the others. So at this point, I think unless there's any other questions of the applicant from the commission, it's time to get back and see if we have any comments from other members of the public since we're still in public hearing. So I'll turn to the commission secretary and ask, are there members of the public who'd like to comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have checked the attendee list. It does not appear that anyone at this time has raised a hand to participate. We have also not received any written correspondence via email this evening on this item.
Okay, so given the controversial nature of this project, we'll come back to the applicant and see if he has any rebuttal to all of those comments or closing remarks that he'd like to make.
No, I just want to thank the city staff. During COVID, it was a little difficult to run through all the issues. So I appreciate Alan and Frank Hogg and Margot and Ethan to work through this. So it's hard, you know, when you look at someone face to face, things can go relatively quickly. But when you have to go through Zoom and go through the process, it sort of strings things out. So just appreciation to city staff and to you commissioners coming here on a Thursday night.
Well, thank you very much for that. And with that, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and we will turn to the commission for commission deliberation. Further questions of staff or the applicant if they need them, and look for a motion. So who would like to start? Commissioner Strongman.
I really like the project. I think it really fits nicely with downtown and with the West Downtown Plan. I just have one comment that in the resolution, item 54 and 56, there's an inconsistency. One has for list a STOWN cable, and the 56 is wave cable. They're actually one and the same, so we probably should get down to wave is as STOWN. It's just a minor technical issue. Other than that, I really like the project.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll go ahead to Commissioner Pickett.
I too like the project. I'm still uncomfortable with the parking concept, but the way I understand the application of state laws and everything, the concessions and everything that's going on, we really don't have a choice. The provision that does not require the separation, I think, is a little bit risky. I'm hoping that the compatibility of the peak hours for commercial versus the residential will mitigate that. As we build more and more properties with less and less parking, we're going to start finding that conflicts in structures like this are abused or do occur, and the parking is abused. But in this case, I don't know that we really have a choice. We'll see what it looks like in 10 years. I think the building is great looking. I think it's going to be a wonderful addition to that corner. Very complimentary to the Lyric. Architecturally, it fits in with the city. And I think that really makes it easy to be comfortable with the 4-foot height variation. I just don't think that's significant. I think it's a big cost savings for them. That's good. It creates a nice outdoor environment for the owner. That's good. If you stand back over at kitty corner from this, again, I forget the name of the restaurant, but if you look at this building, you're not going to know the difference of that 4 feet, and the building looks really great. So I'm very comfortable with it and very supportive of it, and thank LCA Architects for bringing another fine building into Walnut Creek.
Thank you for that. Anyone else like to make comment? Commissioner Anderson?
Thank you. I'm very supportive of the project too. I think it is a well-designed building. It's the parapet wall, I think, is just justifiable and serves a good purpose. I have to say I am still bothered on the finding that to the greatest extent feasible future passive and natural heating and cooling opportunities are in the project. I just don't see that really anything in that paragraph justifies that finding. And then maybe just a question of the way I view the term passive design, but I really look at it as it's a design feature. Compliance with Title 24. Well, you're required to comply with Title 24. I don't think that's a passive thing, and that deals more with the heating and cooling systems, which is not a passive effect. I don't see that there's any kind of design elements of the building that have either provided passive heating or cooling, or particularly made future modifications or improvements that could do that. And perhaps it's just a difference in the way we view that. But I do have a problem with that one finding. And I don't know, it's not enough for me to oppose the project. I will support it, but perhaps the staff or the city attorney and I could talk a little bit more about this and determine, perhaps what the actual definitions ought to be and what qualifies as a passive heating or cooling design.
Okay, thank you for your comment. We'll go to Vice Chair Koselik.
Thank you, Chair. I like the project. I think the building looks pretty nice. I do like also that there's 3 different size units for the affordable units. I think that's very nice. While I do think that the parking can be made to work, knowing how controversial parking is in Walnut Creek, I am rather disappointed that there isn't some sort of preliminary parking plan that kind of outlines how this is going to work, how it's going to be enforced, how you're going to make sure that residents do have spaces when they need them, how you're going to keep just people from the general public parking there and getting a ticket, but so what, leave the car there for 4 or 5 hours, who cares? So that's my only disappointment, but I do think there's ways to make this work, and I am supportive of the project.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ward, would you like to make comment? Anything else to share?
Sure. Well, I just want to thank the staff and the applicant for a great presentation. It was very informative and I really appreciated that. It's a beautiful building. I was a little shocked at first just by the difference in the size, so, but I think it fits in really well. And I think it's like others have said, complementary to that area of downtown, and the increased housing is something we greatly need. And I appreciate that there's an affordable housing component as well. So I am also in favor of it. I think it looks beautiful. So that's the only comment I have.
Okay, well, that leaves me for a quick follow-up, and that is, I really like, David, what you guys have done. I mean, you have used every element of your knowledge of the city's rules, the specific plan, the state code, to really maximize this site in a way that doesn't create a really terrible, ugly cram job the way I have seen and done in my career. This is a building that the owner would be happy to live in. I do think there are some challenges. We've talked about a few of them. Many of the others, I think that your team will work through when we get there. And I'm cutting you quite a bit of slack because I understand that you're an experienced and well-respected member of our community who's worked through a number of these projects. I do share the concerns that both Commissioner Pickett and Vice Chair Koselik have raised, really about the parking and just how that's going to work. I'm also, very pro-development. I'd like to see this happen. I don't want to get in the way of letting the builder do what they want to do, but I do feel the need that, at least with the parking agreement, there needs to be some way for the city to review. And I'm not sure exactly what the wording of that condition might want to be, only because I'm concerned that really this is ultimately some kind of a private agreement, and the city's review and comment of this at some level, I'm not sure at what point it really is enforceable. So that's why I'm going to come to the expert in the room and see what he has to suggest, because I believe we have consensus that with some additional parking condition that you've suggested that you would be okay with, and we'll let you confirm after we hear whatever our expert in the room might have to say. I'm going to suggest that that we listen to that proposed condition, talk about it a little bit, and then based on that, we make a motion to approve with that additional condition. So with that, I'm going to turn to you, Assistant City Attorney Hickey, and see if you have any helpful ideas to shape our concepts into a verbiage that we can all be comfortable with.
Sure. First, I guess I did hear potential agreement from the applicant, and so I do have some language I can read into the record. And I would suggest inserting it as a new number 47 in the transportation parking conditions, and just renumbering the rest of the resolution accordingly. I do think, Chair Lezak, you correctly point out the situation's a little different in the sense that we're not granting a use permit. This development, other than with respect to the density bonus, is permitted by right, under the general plan and the applicable zoning. But this is what I would propose as a condition, and I'll go ahead and read. Applicant agrees to submit a parking plan to city planning staff for review and comment prior to recordation of CC&Rs in connection with the project. So it would give city staff the opportunity to review that agreement, provide input, and the applicant could take that into consideration prior to finalizing and formalizing that agreement in any CC&Rs.
My only additional comment to that might be that it's a plan and draft agreement and prior to recordation, and that once completed, once the agreement is completed, that the city staff be provided a copy. And I believe what we're saying is that this is really for communication with the city, that ultimately the city's review and comment could be helpful to the applicant developer, but is not binding. That there would be potentially other review by, say, the Department of Real Estate or others, but that's not part of this condition. That's a separate process. And that really, once the agreement is completed, that a copy would be delivered to the city, not for enforcement, but just for information. So the intent of this is so that we're communicating that we understand that this is a significant concern to the Planning Commission, but we also recognize that it is a private matter between the applicant, the homeowners association, the commercial owner, and we're not in a position to require something prior to the final map, and we don't want to overstep our position. So those are my only nuanced comments to what you said. And so with that, we'll suggest, let's see, do you want to try to read something new into the record and then have David comment on it?
Sure. Give me 30 seconds here.
Okay. So while you're doing that, David, I'm going to put you on the spot and say, do you have any further comments to where we're going with this?
No, I think it's a well thought out process and avoids any problems with future owners, future tenants, everything else. So not a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're not really trying to strong arm or condition the project in a way that we think would be illegal per se, but we're very cognizant of our concerns and wanting to protect the city. And so we appreciate you as the applicant on behalf of the owner being willing to entertain, what's really what we think an important process.
Chair Lezak, in the interest of providing the city attorney another couple of seconds, I wanted to quickly make a clarification based on something I heard in the presentation tonight. And I know that the Planning Commission hasn't had many market rate projects come before it with a density bonus component necessarily. The city itself hasn't had many of them. 1910 Noma was a recent project in the recent past year or so, 18 months ago, that used density bonus ordinance, state density bonus law to increase the number of units on site. That site had a base density of 100 units, and the density bonus allowed a 35% increase in the number of units for a total of 135. But the important distinction I wanted to make is the way in which we calculate density bonus and the way in which the number we use to calculate the percentage. In this particular case, very low income for this particular project, it's 11% is the threshold for density bonus law. The applicant is meeting that threshold by providing 3 affordable units out of the 25 base density units permitted by zoning. In this particular case, the MUD does not specify a density range for the project site, and therefore we default to the zoning. The zoning says you may have 1 unit per 750 square feet of lot area. That equates to 25 units. Therefore, with that established as the base density, 11% of 25, we arrive at our 2 point something number, which we round up to 3. Therefore, the applicant is providing 3 affordable units. In doing so, the project is afforded a density bonus. They're electing to go above 25 units. It just so happens it's 27. But I just wanted to clarify how the calculation and math goes. Thought this might be a good opportunity as we wait for the city attorney to finish his impromptu writing. And I hope the commission was able to follow.
All right.
So what you're saying is that, again, I think this is something that Margot Ernst was pointing to. In concept, they could have had more units within the site based on that bonus available. And again, I think my comment was more about the restrictions of height and other variabilities, so that they've really not used all of their bonus, if you will.
That's correct. And there's no, you're not compelled by state law as a developer to use all of the available density bonus. You are allowed up to a maximum of 35% when you provide certain levels of affordability. And that's the point I would make.
Okay, so we're turning back to our attorney.
All right. Let me read this into the record. Here goes. Applicant agrees to submit a parking plan and draft parking agreement to city planning staff for review and comment prior to execution and recordation in connection with the project CC&Rs. Applicant further agrees to provide the city with a final executed copy of such parking agreement.
Okay, that generally meets with what I was looking for. And I'm for the record, I will say that the applicant, David Bogstad, put a thumbs up, but I believe the attorney and the commission secretary would suggest, David, that we would like to hear you verbally say that you are okay with that.
I am okay with that.
All right, anyone else on the commission have a comment? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and motion that we approve the resolution for the tentative map number 9529, state density bonus tree drip line encroachment permit application Y19-068 with 2 modifications to the conditions. One modification being the modification to the condition relative to the tree permit retaining wall as mentioned in Alan Carrion's staff report. And the second would be the addition of the additional parking condition that the city attorney just read into the record, and all of the conditions would be subsequently renumbered appropriately. And that's my motion. Thank you.
And I'll second it.
Chair Lezak, I would also add the correction pointed out by Commissioner Anderson with respect to Stound and Wade.
Yeah, Commissioner Strongman, and we'll certainly ask you guys to follow up on Commissioner Anderson's comments separately. So thank you. We'll go ahead and make all of those suggested changes into my motion, and we'll turn it back to you, Commissioner Pickett.
I'll second that with the changes.
Commission Secretary.
Thank you, Chair Lezak. We have a motion and a second. A roll call. Chair Lezak.
Yes.
Commissioner Pickett.
Yes.
Commissioner Strongman.
Yes.
Vice Chair Kursulik,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
and Commissioner Ward.
Yes.
The ayes have it, 6-0.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and congratulations, Mr. Bogstad. I look forward to your next project. And with that, we'll go ahead and close the public hearings section of our meeting tonight and move into the commission considerations portion. Commission Secretary, are there any commission considerations for the meeting tonight?
There are none this evening. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. With that clarification, we'll move on to the commission member staff reports or announcements item on the agenda. Are there any commission members who have anything to say or staff announcements?
There are no staff announcements.
Okay, well, you see Commissioner Ward is would like to make an announcement. So
Yeah, just a quick PSA, just to remind everyone to vote. And if there are people watching who are still not registered, you can register and vote up to November 3rd. So that option is available to you. So turn the ballots in at City Hall. I did that. It was super easy. Didn't have to talk to anybody. Just put it in the lockbox, safe. And I already confirmed that my ballots have been received. My ballot has been received by the registrar, the ballot people. The people that count the ballots, they got it. You can check online. So that's another great thing. So thank you.
okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? I have a quick one. There is the mayor chair standing committee meeting is a special meeting that's held, I don't know, quarterly. And though the chair and vice chair of each commissioner are asked to attend, and there's some discussion of kind of updates and discussion of what's going on with the city, but all commissioners are welcome to attend. You don't have a seat at the table per se, but you're invited to attend as a member of the public. It is a publicly available meeting. It's a Zoom meeting that's posted, and that meeting is on October 30th, which is a Friday at 9 a.m. So if anyone is interested, both in the public or member of the commission, please look online to find that Zoom meeting information. And Commissioner Kursulik will expect you to be there because you're the vice chair. And so just wanted to make sure you were all aware of that. And unless there's any other announcements, I'll go ahead and adjourn tonight's meeting at 9:08 p.m.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
See you in a couple weeks.
Thank you.